Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Joey Yao. I am the director of the CLC Performing Arts Center, and it's my honor to curate the Cultural Thursday program for Central Lakes College. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to thank the faculty and staff at CLC for supporting this program, as well as those of you who made the journey out today. I know we rescheduled this at the last minute last week, so thank you so much for being able to be here today. If you have friends or family who were unable to attend, we are live streaming this on the CLC Broadcast YouTube page, so they will be able to see it after the event is over if they would like to visit us there. There will be time for questions after the presentation. I will be back there with a microphone. If you have a question, I would just ask that you raise your hand so I have time to get to you with the microphone. Even if you speak nice and loud, the microphone allows us to be able to hear your question on the video so people who are watching at home will be able to understand the conversation. And I'm now honored to introduce our presenter today, CLC Sociology Professor Gary Payne. When asked how long Gary has been teaching at CLC, his response to me today was simply, too long. He has done, at last count, over 25 Cultural Thursday presentations, sharing the travels that he and Mary Rosenberg have taken over the decades, including to Somalia, Ethiopia, and, as we'll hear about today, Argentina. So we are honored once again for Gary to travel with you once again. So please welcome Gary Payne.
Well, thanks, Joey. He's taller than I am. So thank you for coming. This was postponed once, and actually there was a false start in March, too. So it's good to get a crowd even this big, and glad to be here. Most of you know me, but if you don't, my name is Gary Payne, as he said, and I'm a 39-year-old sociologist. I've been teaching here for 30 years. It's a good start. Okay, so I was a whiz in school. Okay, so we're heading for Argentina. I got a lot to do, so I'm just going to get started here. But you're special people to come learn about other Earthlings, you know?
Gary, can you talk directly into the mic?
Okay, I'm going to move this thing then. This should help. Okay, there we go. How's that? All right? Okay, so just looking at this, this is just for scale here. I got this off internet. To give you an idea, you know, superimposing Argentina on the U.S., I mean, if you could pick up Argentina and drop it on the United States, it would look like this, and it'd hurt a lot of people, so don't do that if you do have that ability. But, you know, it's the 8th largest country in the world, and the most amazing thing about its topography is what's happening on the left there, the Andes Mountains, which are being pushed up by the Nazca Plate on the left there, about ½ an inch a year. And it's been doing that for a while. And so those things are really, really high, and it makes for a lot of landscapes that are beautiful, national parks that you can't believe if you haven't been down there. It's a long ways, long flight, kind of expensive. Thank you, Matt. The highest point is Aconcagua at 23,000 feet. The amazing thing about this mountain is that you could climb this without ropes or crampons or any of that. It's walkable in the summer when the snow's mostly gone. But at 23,000 feet, it's pretty hard to get up there because about 15,000 feet you get the headaches. And then 18,000 feet, you get heart attacks and brain swelling. But there have been people that make it, but it's free to try. And Mary and I got this far. We started at 14,000, so we got maybe 15,000, and that was when the first headaches started to come, and they can last, you know. So we took off. Now, this isn't about us. I'm just showing this here because Mary's, she doesn't like to make presentations like this. And she's going to come tonight to the presentation. But she's fully 50% of this work because she's a great wildlife spotter and organizer and planner. And she's got so much courage. I mean, traveling through Somalia and Ethiopia together, not many people would do that. No complaints. She just wanted to know. And so that's why she's perfect for me, because as a sociologist, that's my job, to figure out what's going on. So she deserves plenty of the credit, and if this does not work out, she deserves at least 50% of the blame. And so please recall that if it comes up. Okay, so there's a lot of national parks, and I'm going to go through them a little bit, but this is about culture, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. The national parks here are not just national parks. They are often UNESCO World Heritage Sites, which means the United Nations has determined that these are special even among national parks in the world. And so you can be assured that you'll be amazed if you go down there. And this is Los Glaciares. And I'm going to skip around so you can see what the terrain is like all over the country, because I don't have time to do justice to any one of these places. This is with a phone picture. If you really want to see the detail and color, maybe come tonight, because I've got a better projector. But the story will be the same, and you'll get the idea here. But if you can do that with a phone, and there's just no end to it. This is in the center of the northern section of Argentina, Ligua, and it's not as high, but it is a rainforest and full of wildlife, and you'll see some of those pictures later. This is Hornocal. It's not a park, but it's a monument, but it's basically the same thing in terms of something that's not been ruined. And you can see the people in the lower left there, and way on up there, little specks, taking a look at what there is to do there. But you can see that what's happening here. With that plate pushing up, it's basically bringing the guts up of the center of the earth and taking them to the surface, which makes a beautiful and interesting vision, but it's also something that drew the miners in, because they knew where to go after the minerals, etc. It's like color-coded. You can't miss it. And so keep that in mind as we go along here. This is Lago Puelo National Park. I'm going to put these things on. And I like all the different planes in this, but this is the kind of thing you can see. We swam, that's a river going by there. Most of the lakes are rivers, because with these gradations of elevation, it's going to go, downhill. And so we swam in that river. It was ice cold, but that's what people do. They're perfectly clear, magnificent lakes and rivers, and full of trout. This is an interesting formation. That's a marble cliff. It's not going to ever be made into marble because it's protected. It's on the Chilean border. And over quite a few years, I'm not sure how many, it's been eaten away at the bottom. It's not easy to eat away marble, right? But it gives you an idea of how long that's been taking place there. And you can get in there, and we did, with a boat, and go inside and take a look at it. It's really amazing stuff. This is a little further in it. And here in this picture, get my laser out here, the Salt Lake there is about 20 miles away. I'm at 14,000 feet. There's a sign behind me that said 14,000 feet. And this is probably about 10 or 12,000 feet. And we took that road down there to it, and you can actually drive out on that lake. It's about as big as Mille Lacs Lake, roughly. It's what it reminded me of when I got out on it. You can't just go out there. You need a guide, or else you could fall through. The original people, who I will occasionally call Indians, are there, and you can get a guide, and we did, and walk out there. And you can even drive out there. We walked as much as we could, didn't want to fall through. But this is a spring in the middle of that lake that is still open at the center. But everywhere you go, this is not even a national park. You just see stuff like this all over the place. A lot of these are just taken from roadsides. There's a cemetery at the bottom there because they wanted to put their loved ones in a beautiful spot. Now take a look at this. This is a tunnel here. Semis can go through that tunnel, and over here too. Give you an idea of the scale, the craziness of the terrain, which is, if you're from flat Minnesota, which I love, but still, this is a real shocker to be driving through this kind of thing. Here you've got this is about 400 feet above sea level, very, very close to sea level. And here, all in one picture, you've got up here probably 18,000 feet. I don't know which mountain it is, but to have that kind of snow on it at the time we were there would be about 18,000 feet or more. Could be 20,000 feet. So, all in one photo, you've got several different planes there. And it's, as you go past it in a boat or walking or in a car, it's mind-boggling.
Iceberg at the bottom?
Yes. Well, no, actually, I think in that one, that's the glacier itself, the Perito Moreno Glacier. We're going to see it big time here in a little bit. Named after Perito Moreno, I think Spanish, maybe not, explorer, naturalist or something. Anyway, so I know I took this one from the road. It's kind of hard to drive when you got scenes like that going by. It's just, it's phenomenal. And again, trout streams, and I just love fishing trout. I didn't even try it here. We were not there to recreate. We were there to learn something, going from museum to museum and park to park. But it would be a lot of fun, because there's no end to it. This is a dry area. You could hike that, though, if you were really like a challenge, going down there and then getting to the top of that mountain and coming back, hopefully. So just some scenes. This is by Bariloche, which is a real busy tourist area, and the rich tend to live around here. It's high, but not real high, and surrounded by national park. Now see, here's the glacier. It makes a dam between that place over there and right here, and then that moves up the mountain because it backs up and makes this jagged top. And dust has blown over some of this. It's not pollution, probably, because it's just going across the Pacific Ocean, and it's pretty clean air. But these things are about 100 yards. It's about a football field high, each one of these things, and all the way back, They're monstrous, and you can't get too close because they're falling in the water in summer, and they'll swamp your boat. And so you really need to stay a quarter to a half mile back at least. And there's people going out there with kayaks, and you're just kind of wondering what's going to happen to them. Get the camera ready, because there's some daredevils out there. If you knew what you're doing, you'd probably turn it so that the wave turns you into a surfboard. But it's ice cold, of course, definitely ice cold. So while I was there, every 5 minutes, one of those things would break off. And they're losing, over a year's time, they're losing a lot of it. Not, at least a sufficient amount of it. That it's kind of alarming because you can see how dark that is. That's a solar collector if it's not covered by snow. So you go from reflector, which is what you want, is keep the Earth stable, and then you melt that stuff off, it becomes a collector, and a very powerful collector. Okay, so this one here is tipping. You can see it's tipping in, and I happened to have the camera ready, and I caught the splash too on the lower left there. But it's just, these are monstrous things. And when something falls like that, then you don't hear anything for a couple of seconds because you're that far away. It's a wake-up call. But beautiful, beautiful thing. This is taken from about 30 miles away from another national park, shooting down towards the Perito Moreno glacier with a telephoto lens. It looks closer than it is. I'm way away from it. But there it was, and I just turned the telephoto lens on it and took a picture. So let's talk about creatures real quick. Hummingbirds, there's 4 or 5 varieties. I just found 2. This is a broad-billed. Looks a lot like ours, but very broad-billed at the skull. And this also has a broad bill, but it's a sapphire, something sapphire. Is it gilded, is that what it is? Gilded sapphire? I think I got it over here. I can't read it from here. I can read it from here. Never mind. Yeah, gilded sapphire hummingbird with its tongue out, which I thought was kind of cute. And I couldn't identify this one. This is a speckled tyrant. and this is a white-shouldered tanager, and I really like watching these birds because this is a male, and they've got a crazy mating ritual that they do, these males, whereas they take off. Here's step one. They take off, and the only time you see that white is when they're flying. Otherwise, they're just a blackbird. So they take off, and they just go flying up in the air, way high. And they get way up there, and then they fold their wings like they're dying and drop, and they're screaming like, ah, just, you know. And evidently this attracts the females. Otherwise, why do it, right? And so, you know, so he's screaming all the way down. He's almost back to the tree, and he makes a soft landing. Somehow, he was not really hurt. But then the females come over, you know, and say, you know, like, are you okay? You know? And, you know, yeah, I'm all right. What's your name? You know? I'm not sure that's what they said, but they were speaking in Spanish, so, you know, I don't know. Kingfishers, they've got them. They're a little larger. It's probably quite different than ours, but they look a lot alike, right? Gilded stilt. Black-necked stilt, excuse me. Likes the wetlands. These burrowing owls, if you saw my Chile presentation, you saw some of them there, they still blow my mind. They're so curious and interesting. They burrow into these high clay cliffs where they can't be open to predators and lay their eggs in there, and then, they're gone after that. But once, I had to climb a hill to get that picture, to get up there where I could see their nesting area. And once you get up there, and they realized they were really checking us out here, and Mary and I was walking together here, and then they look at how beautiful they are, for one thing, but they fly around you. See, they're making a left turn up here, just doing a circle just to check us out. Like, if you're going to look at us, we're looking at you, And so they're really a lot of fun. This is an oyster catcher, and about the size of a crow. Maybe that's an oyster. I wouldn't know. And here's a couple of males that were either playing or fighting or both. This is a buteo hawk. Say again? Okay, I thought maybe asking a question or something. But they're plentiful, so I don't normally take a picture of them. They're very, very common. But this is a young male that had good colors and good condition, and he let me get really close. This is a burrowing owl, another critter that lives in the ground. We have some here in this country too. And they morph into a different shape and size to make you think they're not alive. It's sort of a camouflage thing. This one's already realized that I've spotted it, but it's starting to morph. This is, step, and then a little bit more fuzzy, and then a little more fuzzy, and then finally, several steps later, they look like this. Same bird on the fence post every time. And then I left the area, didn't want to bother him, but on my way back, he was still there, or she, I'm not sure. And that's what they normally look like. Big difference. Okay, Aplomado falcon. He took off as soon as I took a picture, and I got another one of him. With one flap, he got 5 feet in the air. This is a crested caracara falcon being harassed by a buteo hawk in the background there. These are ashy-headed geese. The offspring aren't too good looking, but that keeps them safe, I think, less attractive, more camo. And this is a rock cormorant that I had been taking pictures of, and he decided to check me out as well, as you can see, and it was a better picture than I had been taking, so I used that. This is a black-faced ibis, but it also may be a black-faced Patagonian ibis. I'm not sure. They're pretty close. Maybe they're the same. And this is a nesting pair, and that's what they look like flying. They're about as big as bigger than a goose, not as big as a swan. And this is so interesting. I don't know what caused them to do this, but we were staying at this place down here below this mountain, a jagged mountain, and they flew up to see this hang glider that had jumped off that mountain. He looks like he's gone up, but he's just getting closer, and the perspective makes it look like he's going higher. But he's coming down, but these two ibis flew up to greet him, which must have been pretty interesting, seeing them coming. Penguins, if you go far enough south on the Atlantic coast, you can see some penguins. You're not supposed to bother them at all. They're at least somewhat protected. The young ones are in the foreground here with not much contrast, and then the mature ones look more like that. Here's a nesting pair. This is a whistling heron, about the size of a great blue, a little bit shorter but stockier. They seem to adapt to any environment. We saw them in near desert, and we saw them in the wetlands. So they're a survivor. Same one. Same one. They got roseate spoonbills down there. I didn't see many, but I got this picture of them. To the left there, you can see the spoon-shaped bills. And these are some really amazing birds in terms of their eyes. Look at those. I don't know if you can really see those rings in this picture, but there you can see better. Yep, and they're red-legged cormorants or gree cormorants, and they're flirting here because this is the mating season. And you remember high school, and they were nesting. And here's one flying. You can see the red legs they're famous for, but for me, that face is the most striking thing I can recall seeing on a bird. This is a guanaco. This is the biggest of the camelids, they're called, the llamas, or llamas, they pronounce them here, or llamas in some places. But they're bigger than that. And this is a little one, not a baby, but halfway grown. Here it is with its mother. And that mother, the larger one, is about as big as a small horse. And they have a season on them because they're doing well. And they're doing too well. And a lot of cars are running into them. So you have to think about that. You don't want to drive at night in Argentina anywhere near where guanacos are, or huanacos probably would be the correct pronunciation. But they're big, and they have dark faces. Here's a vicuña, which is a lighter face, and that's the normal look. If you get too close, as I did, you get that look, and I don't know what that look meant, but I felt disrespected. And maybe I should have, This is in Hornicala, it's the monument that I showed you earlier. They're protected, but they have their limits for humans. And there's a baby, not really baby, but a youngster vicuña. He was hiding behind the bush, and his ears went halfway down right away because he saw that I spotted him. The biggest mammal there is the southern sea lion, which is bigger than our northern sea lions. That mane is at least 2 feet across, and they weigh up to half a ton, and these females are about a third their size, which makes you wonder about the mechanics of mating. But it's working out for them. So a little bit more about these sea lions, because we got some really good pictures that really make you think. They just have flippers. They've got a little bit of an elbow. But how do they get up to the top here? They're trying to stay away from the killer whales, right? And that worked for them. But how do they climb? They do this 2 or 3 times a day at least, because we spent the day there. And that's a lot of work, and that's a half-ton critter that's up there. How do they do it without scratching themselves up? Maybe they do get scratched up, but that's what they do. And they were sleeping the whole morning, so we got almost no activity. And then suddenly, the females started singing all at once. It seemed like after the first one sang, the others sang, and all around us were colonies of these things. We had it all to ourselves. It was an unbelievable experience. And then they all started jumping in the water at the same time, about 11 o'clock in the morning. And you can see them jumping, down, and from the top, and barely clearing the cliff as they went down. Here's another one a little further down, and finally a splash. Now, I have a really rare picture here. This is a sea monster. I don't know what's funny about that. It's 25 feet long from here to here. You rarely see a sea monster. In fact, never. But this is, I'm going to sell this, I think, I know of one news network I think I could sell that to as a sea monster. So, all right. Well, all right, the culture part. Of course, the culture depends on what's out there. So, in a sense, the flora and fauna and the landscapes are part of it. And the first people that got there were the Asians. They really were all Africans, according to our DNA. There's no doubt about that anymore. According to the scientists, and I tend to believe them. We all came from Africa. Some people went north and west, became the Europeans, and kind of stayed there. The people that went east didn't just go a little ways. They went all the way around, and they even hit what we call the West. At Alaska, came down probably, the way they did it so quickly probably was in canoes or something like that went along the coast, because it wasn't a big time difference between when they got to Alaska and when they got to the tip of South America. But that was 20,000 years ago. That's 200 centuries. It really says something about culture that we could even have been told that Columbus discovered America. And I know that's not news to people here that come to something like this, but Columbus was 195 centuries too late. He wasn't even in the running. But that's what cultures do. It's not just our culture. They grease themselves up, and it raises morale and pride and patriotism, but it obscures the truth. And so, what are we teaching? We should be teaching the truth, it seems to me, or otherwise we're just wasting our time. It's just indoctrination. Well, the fact that they could paint like this indicated that they had a pretty efficient lifestyle, that they had time to learn how to do that. This is on undulating cave walls. So you're having to figure out what it looks like way behind you. You see what I mean? To make this work. And so this takes a lot of talent. And some of the stuff is at least 10,000 years old. And if they keep looking, maybe they'll find it going all the way back to, 20,000 years ago. But there were sentient beings that were reflecting on their own existence that far back. That's something to think about. That's a long time. Well, the people that came here came to a paradise. It was, and when I say that, you could say that anything on the earth is a paradise, and yes, you could make that case. But these mountains, there's a freshwater reservoir waiting for you. And they leak that stuff out all year long. And so you've got the melted snow, which is the cleanest thing you can drink, right? And they put canals out into the fields so that they could have orchards and crops. They dug the canals, and those canals are still in service by different people now. But they were out there, and they did this a long time ago. They knew what they were doing to explore there, for one thing. And then to build those canals, they were engineers. They figured it out. And they were doing themselves quite a favor there. So as that water washes down, you've got pretty clear water for miles. You could still have parasites, right? But think what other people are drinking. You know what I mean? The Mississippi at its cleanest wasn't like that. And there's plenty of game. You've already seen some of it. And so if you go around to the museums, what you see is just tons of artifacts, Indian artifacts. Here we're always thrilled if we can find a arrowhead. I did as a kid, and boy, it took a lot to find them. But they're just everywhere. In fact, while we were there, Mary was just walking along on a trail. She says, look at that. And it was a bolo head. You could see the grooves cut. And you can't take these things home. It's not legal, and it's not ethical either. And so we gave it to the lodge where we were staying, and they looked it up in a book, and it was the bolo heads that the Indians had used it to, put some leather around and throw it on the guanacos and tangle up their legs, and capture them. But it's not just arrowheads. It's these containers. I'm not sure what you call them when they're this big. They're a big jug for sure, but they're so smart. That may look primitive to you, but this is a really smart thing. If things get really weird on this planet, which they could, given what's happening now, you might be needing one of these. This is a refrigerator. If you fire it hard enough, you can stick it's watertight. Then you can stick the bottom in a stream. Sorry, and you've got a refrigerator. You can put it in a cave and do the same thing. It's rodent-proof because rodents can jump, but they can't jump this high. And all that negative angle, they just can't cling to it. And then you put the lid on it, and it's just rodent-proof and pretty much bug-proof. And if you want to move it, turn it on its side and roll it wherever you want. Even uphill, a couple of guys could roll that uphill. It's its own dolly. It's primitive, and yet it's not. And people are using them. And they're, the museums are just full of masks. And, that they've made that was a big deal. Actually, south of our border from Mexico on down, masks are a big part of ritual. And they were really into it down there. And they had the luxury of time to make some cool ones. I wish I had time to show them all to you. They were also big musicians. These are flutes, of course. They could be made out of bone, or they fired them clay on the left side there. This guy he's a Selknam Indian, a very unusual person because they were almost all wiped out. 4,000 became 100. And but they are so tall. There's no one like them in South America. Nobody that tall. They range from 6 feet to 7. And they're so tall, and they've got a lot of black hair that's long and strong and powerful. So they were different people. Anyway, he is making these flutes now, and he's a musician. He could pick up, and he did pick some of those up and play all of them, even though they're different sizes and pitches and different places for finger holes. So he makes these things and plays them in a band. I would love to have heard it because what he played for us, he could have been in a Philharmonic, and I'm not kidding. I actually have that, but the video won't fit into the slideshow. At least I haven't figured out a way to do it. So I can do it, though, later if somebody stays. This is going to be a long presentation. I've been teaching hour-and-a-half classes for so long, I can only speak in hour-and-a-half intervals. Ask my wife. Okay, so that's actually true. But this is Pachamama, of course. This is the core religious idea south of, of Central America and probably places in Central America. And there's variations on it. But it's the core idea. And it's really interesting religion. In case you're wondering, I was baptized into the Methodist Church. And I went to Bible schools and Youth for Christ meetings and stuff like that. I love the story of Jesus. As a scientist, I can't say that I know that it's true, but it's a great story and a great example for all of us. But this has got something going too. In this case, with Pachamama, the earth goddess, or Gaia, Pachamama is the more common term down there. It's a she, for one thing. That's big, right? Because in the Christian, Islamic, Judaism gig, it's just guys, no wives, no sisters, no daughters, no, et cetera, et cetera. So that's, that puts a different spin on it. Women get some dignity that they might not get in a more patriarchal society. Sandy, I can't remember the last name, anthropologist, did studies, and for example, rape is almost unheard of in societies that are still strongly matriarchal. So that really tells you something. And also, there's no abstractions. In my religion, the one I was inducted into, was, you've got these things that you can't see. God, the devil, heaven and hell, and that kind of thing. And with Pachamama, there's no problem. You're sitting on her right now. It may not seem like it because we've paved the earth over here. But back in the day when these religious ideas were conceived, you'd be sitting in a forest, and it's all alive. And you are too. By the way, with Pachamama, there's no division between the divine and the sinners. It's just, you're it. You're Pachamama. You don't have to even look down. You are it. You're the biota on this planet. And you think, yeah, well, this Earth is a great big rock, basically, and so maybe that doesn't make any sense. That the idea is that it's alive. But look inside your own body, and what do you got? You got bones, minerals. They look a lot like rocks. And so the concept is really kind of makes some sense in terms of scientifically, you know. I'm not a Pachamamist, but in terms of logic, it's not bad. There's been many variations on this. If there's anything abstract, it's what humans do to try to show what Pachamama looks like. Again, you don't have to do that. Just look at yourself. You know, we're part of it. And the idea behind Pachamama is to take care of Pachamama because you're taking care of yourself. We're all part of it. You know, it's you know, there's no concept of hell or sinners. It's just take care of yourself. It's simple. Maybe it's too simple for some people, right? I don't know. Of course, AI got a hold of it, right? And so now it's, I don't know what you call it. Pacha something else. Okay, well, if you're going to get rid of a whole bunch of people, a whole race of people, you're going to need some justifications because, at least from a sociological point of view, we don't think that the human nature is evil. We think it can be manipulated by bad leaders, and it often is, regularly is, so where we turn against each other. But if you're going to kill a whole race over centuries, you're going to have some reason for it. And the stuff that, you know, was around was that, well, they're savages. They're not like us. We don't speak their language. They're not Christian, and et cetera, et cetera. You know, that, and of course, when you kill them, they will kill you back. And that's where they start the movie. Well, they killed Bob over there. So, you know, they must be evil. Well, let's get them. Let's take care of them. And, you know, and once you start that, you know, that's what happens in wars. You know, everybody, you know, points the finger, and so, you know. But when you take a look at what they did, they were already mining long before white people got here: gold and silver, platinum and copper. And they had domesticated llamas and alpacas. I don't have any pictures of them. I got one picture of a llama coming up, but that's one. And ducks. They domesticated ducks. They produced most of the food that we eat that is not meat or dairy. Potatoes and tomatoes. So right there, you got the French fries and the ketchup, right? Corn, beans, squash, melon, peppers, chocolate, all kinds of things. You know, I always ask, would you really want to live without chocolate? You know, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but some of you got it. Okay, so the fact is, this is an Indian market, and they're still doing it. You know, there's the peppers, and there's the tomatoes, and these are potatoes. I think I can't tell. I have to look over here to see that. But at any rate, these are Indians. This is an Indian market. They're still doing this stuff, and they've done it for a long time. And if you're eating any of that, and you really believe that Indians are lesser, well, you know, what are you doing eating these savages' food? You know, if you got a friend that's you know, got something bad to say about indigenous people, you tell them, you know, just start eating broccoli. You know, it's waiting for you. They didn't invent that one. You know, they've produced a lot. It's been a big gift. We've given them some gifts too, and that's the way it should be. You know, just that exchange. And in some cases, it's happening. They also made a lot of spices. Okay, so, but the draw of those minerals was too much, and all the land. It's a huge country with all that fresh water. This is the most valuable land in the world, even today. And so, and people are buying it up like crazy. The biggest landowner in Argentina is an Italian, and there's people buying it from the east, from Singapore and places like that, because this is still, you know, unruined. Well, yeah, I wish I could say everything was all positive about Argentina, and the beauty is there. And the people today are very nice, and I'll get to that. But what they went through was a history that's as violent as any, maybe more violent than ours, and that's saying something. And this is a metal sculpture by Eliana Molinelli. I don't know her. But I saw this in Mendoza. I took a picture of it. Basically, it says "disarm" is the title, but the whole idea behind it was that the past of Argentina is so cruel that it's like, this is all we are, is a head with guns. And I hate to say it, in the studying I've done over the last couple of years, because I don't just go someplace, I read up about it so I know what I'm looking at. It's that violence, especially for the Indians. I want you to just read that. I'll give you a second. That term genocide is probably too cavalierly used, right? Because everybody says, oh, that's genocide. And every side here that exists has probably been guilty of it. But in this case, it was government policy. And the guy that wrote this, General Roca, he had been killing Indians for 5 years. That was his mission, to get rid of Indian resistance, which is a way of, anybody that's any trouble won't leave their land, runaway slaves, whatever, let's kill them. And he'd done a bunch of them. He'd done in a bunch of them. And he says, let's get some more. Let's keep going. Now, you might be thinking, well, there's always some nuts in every culture. That's true. And maybe he was just, some unhinged person that doesn't really represent Argentina. But in fact, his next job, guess what it was? President. And his next job after that, president. 2 terms. He did represent it. Of course, there were people that knew that was wrong to kill all those people over centuries, but they didn't win the day. So, and look how late this is. This is 1879. This is long after Custer, and continued obviously in 2 terms with him, and after that, it was bounty hunters, and they were legal. Mining companies could just pay them, and so I'm sorry for all this violence to drag you through it, especially in the period that we're living through right now. But if you want to understand culture, you've got to understand the history, because it shapes us. Okay, so some of the Indians cleverly decided to try to survive by taking up the garb, the dress, and the lifestyle of the gauchos, the white, poor European immigrants. And that probably helped them. But in the end, they wouldn't leave their land. And the land barons, some people who didn't even have an industry, just want to buy that land because they knew what was going to happen. They just had to go. And that's part of the reason, for the removal. Here are the about 100 of the remaining Selknam Indians. They moved them clear off the continent to Dawson Island. Here, the survivors, they may not look tall to you, but take a look at those legs. These are tall people, and barely alive. And some of them, because of their look and their height, some enterprising European immigrant said, hey, let's get some of those guys and put them in a freak show and go to Europe with them. And they did that. Give you the idea of the mindset. So basically, the title of this production was the Paradise Lost and Found. And for the Indians, it was definitely lost. Slavery of Indians was very common. It was more common than with Africans. It's problematic to do that with Indians because they could run away and live off the land, but it was still hard. And also, they may kill your relatives if you run away. So they were able to get Indians to do a lot of slave work for centuries. And if they died, you just get another one. But blacks were brought over from Africa, but it was not near the enterprise that we had here in this country up north. But the blacks had a disadvantage too. They couldn't run away. They didn't know the land. They wouldn't know how to stay alive. So they were stuck in their positions and, basically slaves for life for many, many years. Okay, so all this cruelty is really depressing or whatever, but we don't want to let that obscure something else that's going on here. The insane amount of wealth, not getting rich, but getting unimaginably rich. And it was all in the hands of some land barons and, some woolen people and some mining people. And maybe, who knows how many, because, it's impossible to know. Maybe 100, 200 people, maybe it was less that really owned it. But there were some at the very top that were just super, super duper rich. And I call them the oligarchy because they can control government, which is one of the lessons. If you allow a concentration of money, and you might like it for a while, but if you're on the wrong side of that, you're in trouble. And they can, this money can be converted so easily into power or cultural management in some way. You don't even have to use your money. You could just threaten somebody. If you don't do what I say, I'm going to give your opponent in the election some money, and he'll beat you or she'll beat you. And so, just knowing how to intimidate people with an attorney or whatever. People that can't even afford an attorney to challenge you back. It's a danger to democracy. I don't care if you're left or right. A concentration, and I've seen this a lot lately, people on both sides of the obvious split that's going on in this country. There's a whole lot of people on both sides that are a little sick of the concentration of wealth being so tight into one little spot. So Argentina's got something to teach us because that continued for centuries. Around 1900, it was one of the richest countries in the world. But the people were miserably poor. And that includes the white folks. You would think that they had it easy, but they did not. So the rich built these mansions, insanely big mansions. You can see Mary standing in this one, and that's just like a fourth of the size of this building. They own art galleries and everything else in their house. And they built the cities. These colonial buildings were built while there was still genocide taking place. And then they became the landlords of these places, putting that wealth, in a place where they can get even more of it. And again, it was inherited after generation, so it's not like, well, they worked hard for it. They were smart to buy the land. You got to hand it to them. But, the generation after that and that, on and on, they didn't work for it. But they had they were born into controlling power. To me, that's not fair, But they built colleges as well as cities, and they built the churches with genocide money. I've checked into it. The other people gave their little offerings, but that's nothing. These oligarchs. Oligarchy means rule by the few, right? A handful of these oligarchs are really behind this. And think what it cost to build this church. But they had that kind of money. And these churches, a lot of them, like this one's 1882. It was actually destroyed by an earthquake in the 50s and been rebuilt. This is all before there were motorized vehicles across the oceans. This is by sailboat. A lot of this stuff came. Yes, the cement, could be done locally, but these arches and stained glass and the, these interior pieces, they came over in sailboats through the seas, and then they had to put those in Buenos Aires. That's where they landed. That port was a good port. And then they would go for hundreds of miles, maybe 1,000 or more, across the ricketiest roads you can even imagine to get this stuff all the way. They are works of art. I mean, the grandeur is just amazing. And it's all throughout South and Central America and some here too. But if you're wondering where it comes from or, where that money came from, that doesn't mean that there wasn't a Jesus or that there aren't good Christians, because there's a bunch of them in this room right now. But I'm just saying. And, of course, it makes people think, when they see that kind of grandeur, they think, oh, there really is something special about our culture. Because look at this. Nobody's got something like this. And that's why if you went to Morocco and saw the Hassan VI mosque, they put $1 billion into that. And it wasn't the average person, right? They wanted to make their culture look like it was something that's really not quite, at least. Okay, so some good news is that some of these Indians, these originals, have found their way through college. I don't know how. It must have been sponsored or something, because they were, swimming upstream on all this stuff. And they are now taking the land acquisitions that were done by massacre to court. They haven't moved any white folks off, and I don't know what they should do. You know, people now, white folks been living there for 3 generations. What are you going to do? It's a mess. It's way too late, right? But there's things you can do, and there's places that you could give to the Indians that are so sparsely populated, and compensate the whites and let the Indians have some of their land back. And you know, so I think that may be coming. I like the way it's moving. It's a little late, but better late than never. By the way, I didn't get this off, and I'm glad. That arrow, if you can't read it, basically a judge said, yeah, you're right, it was a massacre, that the land shouldn't have been, you know, treated that way. And he says, the one thing we got to do is educate the people, because people don't know these stories. Just like we don't know our stories either. We've heard a little bit about it, right? But what happened here and what happened there, these are stories that are pretty hard to imagine that took place. And we ought to learn something about that so it doesn't happen again. That doesn't, you know, I'll just leave it at that. But he said, put it in the syllabus of the schools, and ordered it to be put in the syllabus. That will get a lot of resistance, right? Because people are going to say, no, we don't want to hear those stories. If you go far enough, you know, you can see Indians living as they, at least somewhat as they used to. We saw these people, they brought those pack animals over that background, if you can believe it. You may as well, because we saw it happen. And, you know, how could you do that? I mean, that looks like tough going. And we got close to them so we could see them. And we talked to them, and they spoke Spanish. I don't know if they spoke their own language. And we didn't talk for long because, I don't know, I think we might, you know, who knows, tourists might be bothering them. But their pack animals were good looking and healthy, and Mary's an expert on that kind of thing. She'll be here tonight at the other presentation. She's got a horse thing going on right now, and she's heard my spiel before anyway. But you know, these people look healthy, happy, organized, so it made me feel good, like, okay, they're not just barely hanging. They're doing sort of okay. And they're starting to build. This is good news now for a little bit, you know. Don't get used to it, though. But they're starting to build cultural centers where they can show off their stuff, and where people consume, you know, buy their weavings and stuff like that, and hear about their culture. And it's and they're doing pretty good, and they're raising crops and putting them in there too. This guy, there's Mary with him. He had a sign up. This is on the border with Bolivia. There's not many white folks here in Yave, Argentina, but and so he sells to the better off Indians that can afford to go to a restaurant. And so we thought, we got to go in there. And he was very friendly and gracious, and he told us what he'd recommend for us to eat. We'd never heard of a lot of it before, and it was cheerful in there. And so I can't even tell you what it was. Potatoes and eggs here, and this is quinoa and eggs, but they also had spices and greens and stuff in there, and it was delicious. And they had their peppers that they grow nearby, and squeezed some fresh lemonade for us. It was delicious. We had to leave, and we were sorry because we'd love to have gone back and tried some other stuff. But he's getting into the capitalist thing, and small business is the best part of capitalism. So I hope he does well. His seats were very authentic, I thought. Okay, so here's Kachi, a mountain town, a beautiful mountain town. You want to go to Kachi if you can, and all these kids are dancing their own gig, their cultural thing, and they're in the town square. That means they're not having to hide. That means they're not afraid or ashamed, and they felt that it was their square too. That's what I want to see, right? And also it's what I want to capture. And they let us take pictures. We asked, and they said yes, and they seemed to even be proud to have been asked. And so they're doing their own thing there. Some of the stuff they did turns out to have some Western influences. But that's cool too. We're eating their food. They can do our dances. Good exchange. That's what we should be doing. And they're doing this to music, and everything was timed, and people were running all around doing different things. I had a lens on not wide enough to get the pictures of the whole gig at the same time. At the end, though, they did this. This thing is purely their cultural pageant. And the young lady at the top there, My guess is she's going to get to pass this on to her kids. So this culture is living. They have also taken up soccer. It works for them because, it's cheap. A ball's cheap and you get a couple of nets, or you can just make something up and play soccer. And these are kids, but the adults do it too. And boy, it's rough. They're doing this on gravel, That's the way the rodeos are too, as you'll see. But so they just make some bleachers out of the mountain there and watch the deal, and it's a big deal for them now. Something I really liked a lot about this La Roja, these are Cola Indians, by the way. I should have said that earlier. A Cola tribe. They are living life to old age. That's something new. Cool. And they look pretty comfortable to me. They're still making masks. I bought this one in Kachi, though. I don't think that was Cola. They were Diaguita. Okay, so now these are, Mary gets in all these because they take better pictures with natural looks if you put, it's us, not just, our little family. It's us together. And so Mary's in all these shots, and I like seeing Mary anyway. But that gets people to relax, and you get some faces that are normal instead of the pose thing. You know what I mean? And it's still pose, but it's got a different flavor with Mary in there. So these are all immigrants, the white immigrants, that you could be forgiven for thinking had it real easy compared to the Indians and blacks. And they did have it easier, there's no doubt, but it was not easy. And for centuries, they've just been put down. When they came over as indentured servants, or they were running from discrimination, like the Gypsies and the Jews, running here from the Christians killing them. The Jews had to get out of there. They were commonly blamed for droughts and floods and things like that, and maybe the Jews had some imperfections too, but the fact is they were running. And they came over here very poor. This is a memorial in a museum to those people who came over with nothing and survived. Well, it wasn't long before the rich people, the aristocracy, the oligarchy, if you wish, decided, let's chase Spain out of here, and then we can take over all their properties, and we'll call it freedom, and so they promised these poor whites, most of them illiterate, right? You're going to get equality. That was the term that General Guimas used, and also San Martin, the other big general, probably more important. And Guimas is the favorite because I think he really meant it. They think he meant it. But at any rate, that dream didn't happen for them. They stayed really poor. In fact, this famous painting by Bernie is about what was going on in 1900 when the whites and the blacks and the Indians and the mixed bloods all got together and said, we're all getting screwed here. The whites thought, what, our white skin is not protecting us. The fact that we're Christians is not protecting us. They're cheating us. They're not paying what they should. They're making us work till we die, et cetera, et cetera. And so the oligarchy was the target, and they decided, we're just going to unionize. And they had been told they couldn't. And they said, we got nothing to lose. Let's unionize. There's too many of us to kill, and they would lose the money that they would have made had they not, because we're their workers, so they won't kill us. That was the thinking, and it often works that way, but not this time. So the oligarchy looked at this situation and thought, we'll never be able to get away from those higher wages. It's going to cut into our profits forever if we let this happen. They said, let's nip this in the bud and let's kill these guys. Of course, they didn't do the killing, but they controlled the government, which controlled the military. And the military, basically started hauling these people off. They knew who they were, and they got no due process. They got no trials. They just got taken out to the country and shot. In fact, in this rare photo, which is grisly again, sorry, these guys are lined up waiting to be shot next in lines, as many as there were soldiers to shoot them at once. You would think they'd run off, but there's soldiers all around. They're probably just hoping that something changed, waiting for a miracle or something. It didn't come. And so they did this in all kinds of places, thousands of people. Now, I know a little bit about this because as we were traveling along, we stumbled upon, didn't intend to go here, we stumbled upon one of the killing fields where this happened. Here, it was 1,500 people, 1,500 shot to death. No trials, no due process, no attorneys, just shot to death. So this sign, expressed what happened there, and my Spanish is far from perfect. Puedo hablar suficiente para viajar, but if it goes beyond that, or if they're talking fast, I can't get it. And there's some words that I need to know, so I took a picture of it and put it through Google Translation, and I'll let you read it. Here it is. So that's the story. Now, think about this. This culture now is leaving signs like that up, which don't reflect well upon it. It's about a decision you got to make. Are we going to pretend this didn't happen? Or are we going to do something? And, and they put the sign up. So this guy was elected in 1946 at the portraits a couple of years after he was president, and there was no real reason to think that he was going to be any better than the rest of them. Because, he was, the oligarchy was a fan of his. He had gone to Italy as a soldier from Argentina and hung out with Mussolini. He was an officer, and, he got into the Mussolini gig, which was fascism. I mean, Mussolini made up the term fascism. Corporate militarism, he called it. There's other definitions these days. Everybody's using that term horribly, all sides, because they don't know what it is. But basically, that's what Mussolini was about. And you would think that he would be bad because he did something else too. He got hold of 10,000 passports, blank passports, and sent them to the Nazis that were about to be tried for the Holocaust. And then encouraged them to come over. They changed their identities, came over and hid in Argentina. We don't know how many because nobody's going to keep a record and no one's going to admit it. But thousands came over probably, and maybe all 10,000, I don't know, but there's a bunch of them. And then they just kind of hid in the hinterlands. They had enough money to live pretty well in Argentina. And so that's not a good start, I'd say, including Adolf Eichmann, who was the engineer of the Holocaust. He got over there and for many years was not found. Finally, the Israelis found him and took him back to Israel and hung him. But, I had no hope for this guy if I had known what all there was to know then. But something happened. There was a little crack in his armor, though, about this. He said, maybe we should allow unions. Now, I don't know if he said that because he's really enlightened or if because you're thinking, these people are pissed, and one of these days is going to overthrow me. So let's have some unions here to kind of make a little progress. Anyway, he did. And then he fooled around and fell in love with this woman, Eva Duarte, who became Evita Perón. And she was an unabashed democratic socialist. That is, she wanted a middle class. She wanted to be voted on. She wanted to be fair and all that. But she said, we need to have some health care. We need to have some schools because people were pretty much illiterate. There weren't enough schools, and people couldn't afford to go there. They need some wages so they could go there. And so she said, we just got to do this stuff. And one wonders what his real thinking was, but I think that she really did flip his politics. And I think he actually ended up thinking it's the right thing to do as well. And so she started running around organizing miners, all these exploited miners dying in the mines because there was no safety conditions. And she met with nurses who were underpaid and often abused in their jobs. And one group after another, and they just loved her. Now, he let her take the limelight. He probably wanted to stay in the shadow so he wasn't assassinated by the oligarchy. And so maybe that's what happened. That's just my guess. There's a million theories on that. But I think he got into it. I think she convinced him. And not just because she was beautiful. I think he listened to some logic. She was poor. She was not super poor, but she got herself to Buenos Aires, but she was not part of the aristocracy. But look what they did. In 5 years, they've had universal health care ever since. When are we going to get it? And some of you think, well, that's not a good thing. But people have it like it in most places. And all the European nations that have it, and Canada too, and Japan, they all have better infant mortality and life expectancy than we do, which are the two main things that you look at. Plus, if you have universal health care, it's all about prevention. Don't wait till it's a problem and then try to treat it. That's expensive and it doesn't work very well. Prevent it instead. And, so this is, Fidel Castro was asked one time, how the hell do you, in this poor little land, can you afford universal health care? And he said, I don't see how we could do it without it. It'd be too expensive. Prevention's cheaper and more humane. But that's a lot. And it got him in trouble with the oligarchy. They really hated him because he confiscated some of their money to do it. He knew where their money was. A bunch of the oligarchs had money in a agricultural cooperative that there's really a bank. And he knew the money was there, and he just confiscated it. So basically it was accrued tax on the rich. And I don't know how much they even noticed it. But of course, they didn't like the trend, right? So they wanted to kill him, and he had to run off to Spain. But the oligarchs needed somebody to do something here, to stop this middle class from being, these wages and all these leftists running around talking about health care. And so they unfortunately found a friend in Richard Nixon, who until recently was thought to be our worst president. And Gerald Ford, you pick the one you want, depending on your politics. But Gerald Ford, of course, was coming in because Nixon's Spiro Agnew was a crook and got out of it by pleading guilty. And then Ford came in, and then, of course, then Nixon had to resign he had obstructed justice. He had cheated on his taxes, just like Spiro Agnew did, and he, did that Watergate gig, which most of you know about. But Nixon thought this was a great idea to help these military dictatorships, not just in Argentina, but Chile and Paraguay and Uruguay and Brazil and Bolivia. And so let's just get rid of them. Let's get rid of the leaders of all these leftist groups, the unionists and artists and whoever stands in the way, professors, students. Students were really enjoying this rebirth, this enlightenment, in a sense, in Argentina. And they were saying, yeah, let's keep going on this. Let's make things really fair. Because they knew how much money the oligarchs had, and they knew that basically the people were so poor. The idea, here's the plan. Bob Brecken's here, the historian, and it's tempting to ask him, is this the worst thing we've ever done, Bob? No, we've done a lot of bad stuff, but this has got to be up there in the running at least. 60,000 people, no due process. They just grabbed them and just took them off, and the families say, well, where's my husband? Where's my son? Where's my daughter? Where's my wife? Because there's all kinds of people involved in this. And they say, well, they're in prison somewhere. Well, where? Well, we'll get back to you on that. But they didn't, because they were dead. They were immediately shot and put in mass unmarked graves or thrown out into the Atlantic Ocean. There's a deep hole out there where they'd weight the bodies. And I'm sorry to go with all this grisly stuff. I'm glad there's no kids here. Anyway, it didn't work out too well. For 60,000 people, 30,000 of which were from Argentina. So it caught the worst blow here. There were some pictures of these guys dragging it off, but you don't want to get caught taking the pictures. And these weren't regular police. These were special forces trained by Nixon and Kissinger and the CIA in Panama. Because the police, regardless of what their attitude was, they aren't going to kill 60,000 people. They know some of these people. And the military wouldn't have done it either. So they had to get basically some goons from somewhere else to take these jobs. They paid them real high salaries because, you're killing people. And, drug them out of their homes, drug them out of schools, they drug them out of the newspaper and the radio, and whoever had the wrong thing to say was gone. That's a lot of people. Think of the logistics of dealing with 60,000 bodies. Some people say 100,000, but to be fair, some people say 10,000. But either way you look at it, 60,000 is the most common thing for all those different countries. Where do you put them? It's unimaginable. How could you make a plan like this? I mean, how could sane people make a plan like this and think they wouldn't get caught? But they went on, and some of them wore masks, and the smart ones wore masks because otherwise you could be outed, and a lot of them were, as you'll see. But in broad daylight, they just drug people off and never saw them again. If you said something, they'd put you in the line. So what do you do in a situation like this? They decided to try peaceful protest, which seems pretty naive, really, doesn't it? But they thought, once again, you've heard this before, I don't think they're going to kill us because there's too many of us. And we're out in public. And actually, there's some truth to that this time. Most of the people were not disappeared, but the leaders were disappeared. But they're marching here in a circle right in front of the presidential palace, which would be on the left over here, right? And so this is the main place in the heart of Argentinian capital in Buenos Aires. And they were mostly mothers wearing white bonnets. That was their symbol. But there were guys and there were, kids and everything else walking around here. The two leaders that were killed were this woman here, Villaflor, and Ponce over here. They were taken on the same night, which sounds a little suspicious that they just disappeared on the same night. And then, as fate would have it, Villaflor's body washed up on a beach a couple hundred miles from Buenos Aires. So basically, really reading these stories, I just got emotional thinking about it. The stories are just incredible. But she did what she could in her time to make things better. Now, they were supposed to be weighted, right, so that they didn't float. But evidently, a quality control was missing, with these death squads, and it happened. And then more bodies started washing up. Now, the press couldn't cover this anymore because, they were disappearing. Anybody who covered it would disappear. But the global press came out for this. And so it was an international embarrassment. And by connection, it also affected the U.S. government because, wait a minute, they started figuring out how this happened. Some people started talking. But it became a huge scandal. I don't know why in the United States there's hardly anyone that could write a single sentence about it. But this is part of our history. And that's why I want to trot it out. Because whenever you see due process being violated, you better pay attention. Something's underway here. You see a force brought in that's not your normal police and not your normal soldiers. You better pay attention. This could be the beginning of something. And no trials, no attorneys, et cetera, et cetera. Well, they won the day, perhaps because of the luck on the wash-up on the beach. But the international press loved this story because it's unbelievable that could have happened and who was involved in it. And so they waited it out. They're standing here in the flood. Nothing could stop them. You would think after they lost their leaders, they wouldn't do this, but they did. And the people that did this stuff, were brought to trial, but they were managed with their money that the oligarchy had and maybe themselves. They managed to stall this out for till 2012. This happened in the 70s. They stalled this till 2012, and the final convictions were 2016. This is just a few years ago. A lot of the guys that did this stuff died, before they could be convicted. But 100 of them went to jail, about 100. And the pilots that dropped them in the ocean, they got life, but the others got as low as 8 years in prison. But that's still a lot. And, they were punished, okay? But that doesn't make it any better, doesn't bring the people back. You just can't let these things happen. You got to pay attention to who you put into power. You got to pay attention to these concentrations of wealth that can control, the institutions. A concentration of wealth is a danger in any society. So while we were there, there's the bonnets. We're in that square now, Marion and I, and this young lady came up and told us all about it. She says, this is the proudest moment in Argentine history, by far. Nothing like it. So since then, the Casa Rosa, this is the White House for them, but it's red. It's Casa Rosa, there's other names for it. But it's where the presidents have lived and come and gone since then, but they never got rid of the middle class. That scandal really outed the mindset of those wealthy people that controlled this whole thing. And also, taught us a little bit about our own government, those of us who have even heard about this. My guess is you're learning something today, as I did, going down there and looking through all this stuff. Well, just recently now, this guy, Milei, has been elected. He's a conservative. Some feared that he'd be one of the oligarchs' agents. And he's running against what is called the Peronist Party now, right? They claim that they're, the Perón's offspring, in a sense. And but they had been caught in some corruption. It can happen in any party, and we need to keep that in mind and make sure there's a free press with as radical of press as they want to be, so we can at least hear a message, right? Because you might get surprised and it might be the party that you're favoring, and so they're painted in this political cartoon as fat from corruption, and they've done some other things wrong too, like all governments do. And this guy wasn't supposed to win, Javier, in this case, Milei. He literally campaigned with a chainsaw. Some of you have seen this because you guys are not the average audience. But he won, just barely, but he won. And he was an economist. They were, the parents don't want to put up with corruption, and who can blame them? And they thought maybe this guy didn't have a bad reputation. He was a noted economist, and he came and he won. And to tell you the truth, he was kind of a rising star in no time, because the peso did stabilize. They'd had such terrible inflation. And so just the fact that he got elected, the peso stabilized, and people said, oh my God, that's what we need, because inflation's killing us. But then he got caught in his first year in office, or very close to it, in a terrible scandal. I'll let you read this. Okay, this is from Forbes magazine. This is not a liberal magazine. This is a magazine by rich people for rich people, or people who want to be rich. And to lose billions and get caught with it. I mean, it was a disaster for him. He was suddenly, the peso starts dropping again because oh my God, here's another one, another corrupt guy. And what's going to happen to the peso now? Argentina looks like hell. He's got a whole term ahead of him. What's he going to do next? And it looked like he was going to get impeached, actually. This is the Buenos Aires News. And they said, he's a goner. But he's not a goner. I know some people got 1 o'clock class and stuff like that and should have been gone a long time ago. But he was saved by this guy. 3 days after the scandal erupted, Elon Musk came down there, and at this time he was working in the administration, and he grabbed his own chainsaw, and they didn't talk much. They just stood around on stage and revved the chainsaws up and, clenched fists and stuff like that. what the message seemed to be, you know what, I think America is going to save our peso. I mean, he's down there supporting. He didn't have to go down there to a guy who's just been caught in a scandal. But there he was. Excuse me. And that the peso stabilized again because of this. So they dropped the impeachment hearings, and he stayed. And sure enough, our president said, "Okay, we're going to stabilize your peso." He bought $20 billion worth of pesos, which made them scarce, which makes them stabilize and even rise. And so the people may have hated Milei and felt so disappointed, but they're starting to think, if the USA is going to stabilize our currency, we're going to have to vote for him anyway, because we don't want inflation back. And Trump, I know I said 20 billion, but he also promised another 20 if Milei was reelected. So in other words, you keep him if you want your currency stabilized. And so Milei has survived, and he's started the cuts with teachers, but they weren't as bad as they could have been. And housing, they get a lot of homeless people from their history, and so you want to do more affordable housing. That was cut. And maybe some stuff had to be cut. Some of it does. Once in a while, you got to be able to live within your means. Of course, it's a battle royal all the time. The rich are saying you're overspending. It's causing inflation, and the poor and the parents were saying, no, you're not paying enough taxes. You've got too much wealth. We need to tax some of that so we can do these things. We need to deal with homelessness and all that stuff. But the battle continues. There's probably some truth on both sides, right? The wind power and solar power, they've been building it, but that's cut. They're back on just petrol again. And I'm wondering what they're thinking right now, given what's happening. Maybe they're in the clear. I don't know. They have some of their own petrol, though. But those Guanaco didn't seem to mind the towers. So the problem is that the forests are burning, and more every year because of the glaciers are shrinking, and the humidity. Just a couple degrees in temperature, even a half a degree in temperature, makes a difference in the relative humidity. And a lot of trees can't make it in that, and then they die, and then they are just tinder. And it's happening every year more and more. And that's a firefighter you see on the right there with Mary. She doesn't look like a firefighter, but she doesn't have to fight the fires, actually. She just has to drive a truck and pick up the people before they're burned to death at their home where there are roads. But you can't even fight. There's no roads up in these mountains. So you can't get up there if you wanted to. You could try to get up there with helicopters and fire retardant, flame retardant, but that stuff's pretty darn toxic. And you don't want to use it if you don't have to. So we asked her, what's the season look like? She says, terrible. And I said, well, how do you know? She says, look, those mountains behind me. We had this conversation right there. Mary and I, and Sol was her name. And, she started crying. She says, those mountains should be covered with snow. And she says, I think it's going to be terrible. I don't know what happened. I can't say. Milei has since gotten very weird in office. He had to be, he's just demonizing everybody, calling everybody names, saying awful stuff about them. He's lost his mojo. He's lost his pride, I think, and he's striking out. And, I don't know if he can get elected even with the peso stabilized. But we'll find out in a couple of years. But in the meantime, he is kicking Indians off their land so he can sell the lands to foreigners. That's who's buying it. And it's probably a good deal, good investment. This is an Indian territory. This is Genocide Watch's document. It's a human rights group. And what they've done is you can see the police are blocking the road. And I don't know if it's police or soldiers, really. But this is Rio Negro police, so I guess is police. And so you can't get in. You can get out. You want to leave as an Indian? You can leave in this Indian territory. But if you leave, you can't go back in. For a while, they carted food and stuff through the mountains, but that's hard to do. And so people are leaving. And as they leave, and not just that place, but others, they just add to the homelessness problem. I hate taking pictures of homelessness, but all I can say is my intention is good. You need to see it somehow to make it real. That's why I like photo essays. They're much more effective, I think, than just opinion, which I also do. But the photos are the real. And Mary and I saw lots of these folks in Buenos Aires. Sometimes it seemed like every street corner. And people are really kind to them. People are just giving them money all the time. Their culture, their history, they realize what it's like to be poor. A lot of people, the vast majority are. And it's made them a more, I think, caring, population. But there's homeless right there by the presidential palace, sleeping in the park. They're taking baths in the fountain right in front of the Casa Rosa. But here's some good news. At least the middle class remains. And these people are not going to give it up. And if you take a look, there's all kinds of ethnicity there. They don't care. They don't separate by groups. They're just there with everybody else. There's a feeling of we're on the same page. We've all experienced it. White skin did not protect us, and you don't look like our enemies anymore. We're friends. I mean, this is an exaggeration. Of course, there's still some racism because we're all a bunch of goofs, and so there's still some, I'm sure. But we didn't see any. We saw people. Everybody hugs everybody there. The men hug men, which takes a while some getting used to. But the fact is, this group of people, they like each other. They're comfortable with each other. That's a big deal. That's the real wealth, I think, in life, not the stuff you have, the money you have, the notoriety. But do you feel comfortable? Do you feel like these people actually love you? And can you love them and they accept it? And this is where it's at, it seems to me. And it was a lot more fun to be there than a lot of countries I've been in, including our own. I think we've got a ways to go. Minnesota Nice takes you halfway, so you can be proud to be in Minnesotan. But we could do better, and this nation could do a lot better. Okay, so they eat a lot of crap, so they do a lot of exercising, and I don't know if it's going to work out for them or not. They suffer the same diabetes and obesity that we do. But the soccer continues. That's their favorite sport. Just talking about sports now briefly, these everyday people. And fly fishing is another big sport. But the real authentic sport is rodeo. I think it's the most authentic. It's the gaucho. The gaucho's kind of the thing, for authenticity. They all put those gaucho hats on for these things. And they're not falling on the sawdust. I cover the Headwaters Rodeo every year up in Park Rapids, the family friends of Mary and I. And there's sawdust down there, so you can fall on sawdust and, you still get hurt. But here, they're just falling on some farmer's field. They just do it wherever they can. And this guy just found out the hard way. Steve Coles was still alive and saw some of these pictures, our dispatch reporter, and this was his favorite one. He liked that there was action. He liked the face. I don't know if you can see it very well, this guy's face. And he probably can't see it, but this guy looked a lot like Obama. Maybe it was Obama, I didn't check where he was. But he's cool as a cucumber back there. He's not going to be the one that gets stomped by this horse. So this horse is about to run into the crowd, and the guy in the middle there has just figured it out, a little late. And, the rider was thrown on top of somebody there, and, people dove on all kinds of directions. But it's a somewhat of a fashion show, and if you go to the fancier, rodeos that cost a little bit more money, it's even more of a fashion show. There you get berets instead of the gaucho hat, although some gaucho hats around there too. And people get hurt, and like there's the fashion show thing again. That guy's ready for modeling, I think. Got a career ahead of him. I really admired this guy. See, I know you got to go. This is a young man who's pretending that he doesn't notice these two women checking him out. He's gazing off into the distance, I don't think I can use that on Mary anymore. But anyway, so here's Mary with some sheep herders, great people, and fun. Probably don't have a high school education, but they know stuff, And I teach cops for a living, right? Have been for 30 years. But I like to see how professional they are, and I kind of check out, just go talk to them. They were well educated, very professional. They use a lot of women because women de-escalate situations, and it can be the reverse with men, but some men are really professional and know how to not sweat it when somebody's insulting them or being stupid, because people do, and it's hard to be a cop. I appreciate that. I was a probation officer and worked in juvenile detention at the state hospital. I'm a fan of good cops. Good cops are a gift. And they seemed really good to me. They were less armed than our cops are. That makes them safer, really. They're not a threat. You know what I mean? They can call your license plate in, but, they're not going to kill you. So, it's a conversation instead of a chase through town. So, yes, this guy was armed, and the woman didn't seem to be. There's vineyards everywhere, and you can stop and talk to the families that are doing this stuff, making it up, this wine, and it's fun because, they're just average people. They're not rich, and they're little vineyards, and they're trying to make their little thing go. Mary and I don't drink hardly at all anymore, but you want to buy a bottle of wine just to support them, and you're sitting there talking to them while they're working, and it's a very cool thing. Chickens in the background, and that's their little signpost out there where they put this together. Okay, I want to talk about the sense of humor these people have. Maybe it's that violent history. I don't know what it is, but they just love a good belly laugh. They love to kid you. They love to be kidded back. And you kind of pare it down to what's acceptable, but they like have a good time, and they're so friendly and so easy to engage with people that are comfortable with each other, that life is just more fun, and we need to be thinking about that. We could be happier as a people. Happy is the real wealth, feeling comfortable, not sitting at home looking at your phone. And you guys came out today. Thank you. Okay, so, and if you earn something like a degree like this guy did, they throw glue on you. You'll get it off in a couple hours in the shower, but it's just part of the ritual and part of the stuff that they do, right? In their stores, they have, these things, people blocking the exits. I don't think those are actual people, but they could be. If they have nothing else to do, they'll crochet some old tree, in Buenos Aires along the way. I don't get it, but I don't have to. It looks like fun to me. Or makes you think about their mind, what they're thinking. They put sunglasses on llamas. There's the llama picture for you, and I think it is an improvement. Say again?
We're just laughing at the sunglasses.
Okay, yeah, I know. They blew my mind too. This is just a phone picture, but okay. So now we're at a vineyard here, and yes, we're drinking, but this is just the beginning. This is not drunk people having a good time. This is just some people we saw and started talking to, and then somebody else comes up until you've got a mob. Before drinking, you go sit down at a table, and some other people come over. And then we decided to take a picture. A waitress is going to take our picture. And these people standing, they weren't even from our table, and nobody knew anybody. But they come from over here, and they come over for the picture because we asked them to, and there you got it, all at once. It's all about inclusivity. You don't turn anybody down, and it's a lovable quality that they have. Okay, so same thing happened here. Mary and I just sat down on a park bench watching these guys play. He's an architect from Buenos Aires, wealthy guy. Here's a couple of poor Indians with panpipes, and they just start jamming in the park. And we were watching them, and we didn't know any of what they're, Mary's a good singer, and I can play a little guitar. But we didn't know their stuff. But they said, right away, they tried to include us. Yeah, okay, sing along. And Mary says, I don't know your stuff. And they said, well, what about you? And I said, no, I don't either. And they said, will you play anything? I said, well, a little guitar. Boom, I had a guitar in my hand, and Mary's singing, and they said, well, play something, we'll play with you. And they know a lot of American music. American music has been a big positive for the United States. Everybody loves our music. And why is it so great? Because of all the different cultures that put it together. We should recognize this is a form of wealth. At any rate, so the one thing that I could finger pick was The Boxer by Simon and Garfunkel. They didn't know the chords, but they picked that up right away. And that shimmering charango there was so beautiful in that Simon and Garfunkel could have had that done. But to hear panpipe behind you and another guitar, it was just a bunch of fun. But we were included, and Mary's a great singer. And so, people started gathering around. It was a lot of fun. People that are comfortable with each other are more likely to dance, right? And don't have to get as drunk to do it, like me. And so, you see a lot of dance in the town squares, some of them for money, some of them getting ready for a pageant, these Indians doing their own gig, doing our gig. When I say our, I mean Western civilization gig. And there's Michael Jackson lookalikes everywhere. And they're good. They're really good. I mean, they've been practicing for a long time. That's how they make their living in town squares. And people putting money in the hat. People dancing on the with dogs in their arms, dancing on the Salt Lake. Just because you got a dog doesn't mean you can't dance, I guess. Dancing on the Salt Lake. But my favorite dancers of all were the gypsies. And we are close to the end here, in case somebody wants. I'm going to put some of my favorite shots together to music, if Matt's still awake back there. And I think he is. But not right now. Just in a minute we're going to do it. But the gypsies, now, that bothers some people about the term, but a lot of gypsies want to be called gypsies and not Roma, which is supposed to be the politically correct term. And these people didn't mind gypsy at all. I asked them about it. And they're also Gitanos, G-I-T, Gitanos in Argentina. But they dance too, but they dance in the air. They put on acts. A couple of families get together and they go from little town to little town, playing in gymnasiums or town halls or out in the open if necessary, and put on a great show. I mean, they take chances with their lives doing crazy stuff, and they make their own costumes, and they travel in poor cars, and then just set up somewhere and do it. What they get out of that is freedom. They're semi-nomadic. They can be artistic. They can please people, and they can make a living, and that's enough. It's not about wealth in terms of money. It's in terms of wealth, in terms of feeling free and artistic and helpful. Makes perfect sense to me. So there they are, gypsies making their own costumes. This is two families. And hanging off rafters, they don't even know how good they are. And all the little girls, after seeing this, there's mostly kids there. I don't know why Mary and I liked it so much, but we did. And those little girls all came up to get a hug from the star of the show, right? And she hugged every one of them. You'll see that in a minute. And this is the end here. If you've got time, hang on for this. This is the Gypsy Kings. They're two families as well. These guys and these guys who started playing together somewhere in Spain. And they have been to Argentina several times. And so it's fitting. And I used this last year for my Chile presentation too, because same thing in Chile, gypsies. And there's quite a few. And we saw circuses there too, just fantastic. And so I'm going to play this. I've got to get it set up here a little bit. And I've got to get ready to do this. And you never know if this is going to work or not. You ready, Matt? Okay, hit it. I'm not hearing it, Matt. That's all I have for you. Thanks.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending. As we have gone over time, we are going to skip the public Q&A, but if you do have questions for Gary, I'm sure he'd be delighted to entertain you, so please come down to the front of the stage to chat. Thank you very much for coming, and we look forward to seeing you at Cultural Thursday next year.
Thank you, Joey. You got to get up before you get gangrene, so.
Thanks, Gary.
My pleasure. Thanks for coming. Okay, so we were there this year. We basically do the snowbird gig. We leave December 15th and come back in early February to miss January, which I'm 77 now. It doesn't feel as cute and fun as it used to. But
So you were there that long?
yeah, and we did that 2 years in a row, though that same time period. So we put 4 months on the ground, and you know, just kind of racing around the whole country. Got to see most of the country, but it's huge, you know. I mean, you got a feel for it, you know. So, you guys think about going?
Oh, I don't know. Our traveling is, we travel so much. I don't know.
Oh, they'll be so much better tonight. I use my own projector, and the color will be twice as good in detail, but the story's the same. Yeah.
Well, we've never been to Argentina. We have been to South America. And Europe, Asia, China.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
But yeah.
It's such a form of wealth to
Yeah.
get to know the other
Oh,
Earthlings.
yeah.
You know,
That was great way to learn about the world.
do you have any tips for me about how